What happens when a country music legend sits down with one of daytime television's most controversial hosts? In just 28 seconds, a simple question about family values turned into the most explosive confrontation in talk show history, ending with Reba McEntire walking off the View stage, leaving the entire panel in stunned silence. The morning started like any other episode of The View. The studio audience buzzed with excitement as they waited for the iconic singer to appear. Reba McEntire had been booked to discuss her latest album, her upcoming tour dates, and her decades-long career in country music. Nobody expected the day to become one that would be replayed and analyzed for years to come. As Reba walked onto the stage, the audience erupted in applause. She wore a beautiful emerald green dress that complemented her signature red hair perfectly. She smiled warmly, waving to the crowd as she made her way to the guest chair. The co-host greeted her with hugs and compliments about her appearance and her recent accomplishments. Whoopi Goldberg sat at the head of the table, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she shuffled through her note cards. Sunny Hostin smiled politely from her seat, while Sarah Haynes adjusted her microphone. Ana Navarro sat with her arms crossed, already looking ready for whatever drama might unfold. And then there was Joy Behar, sitting with that familiar smirk that regular viewers knew all too well. The interview began smoothly enough. Whoopi asked Reba about her new music, and the singer spoke passionately about the inspiration behind her latest songs. The audience listened intently as she shared stories from the recording studio and laughed at her funny anecdotes about her band members. Sarah asked about the tour, and Reba lit up as she described the cities she would visit and how excited she was to perform for her fans again. She talked about how much she loved being on stage and connecting with people through her music. Everything seemed pleasant and professional. Then Joy Behar leaned forward, that certain glint in her eye that signaled she was about to stir things up. She cleared her throat dramatically and shuffled her papers, making sure all eyes were on her before she spoke. "Reba, I want to talk about something more serious," Joy said, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "You come from Oklahoma, you sing country music, and you have a very specific fan base. Let's talk about the values you represent." Reba shifted slightly in her seat but maintained her composure. "Well, Joy, I'm proud of where I come from. I grew up on a ranch learning the value of hard work, family, and treating people with respect. Those are the values I try to live by every day." Joy's smile didn't reach her eyes. Family values. That's an interesting phrase. Some people use that phrase as code for other things, don't they? Things that exclude certain people. The tension in the studio became palpable. Sunny Hostin glanced nervously between Joy and Reba. Whoopi put down her note cards and sat up straighter. The audience fell completely silent. Reba took a breath, choosing her words carefully. "Joy, when I say family values, I mean exactly what I said. Loving your family, working hard, being kind to your neighbors, teaching your children right from wrong. I don't use it as code for anything. I mean it sincerely." "But your fan base," Joy pressed on, leaning forward even more. "They're mostly conservative, mostly from rural areas. These are people who often oppose progress, who cling to outdated ways of thinking. Don't you think you have a responsibility to challenge them instead of catering to their narrow-minded views?" Ana Navarro jumped in. "Joy has a point, Reba. Country music has historically been associated with, let's say, less progressive attitudes. How do you reconcile that with modern values?" Reba's expression remained calm, but her eyes showed a flicker of frustration. "I don't think it's fair to paint millions of people with one broad brush. My fans are doctors, teachers, farmers, small business owners, parents working 2 jobs to provide for their kids. They're good people trying their best. Just because they live in rural America doesn't make them narrow-minded." Whoopi tried to intervene. "Let's take a moment here," but Joy wasn't finished. She cut Whoopi off mid-sentence, her voice growing louder. "Come on, Reba, we all know what kind of people go to country concerts. They're the same people who oppose equal rights, who want to turn back the clock on progress. And you make millions of dollars singing to them, telling them what they want to hear." The audience gasped. Several people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. Sunny Hostin's mouth hung open slightly in disbelief. Reba's voice remained steady, but there was steel in it now. "Joy, I don't tell people what they want to hear. I sing songs about love, loss, heartbreak, and hope. I sing about real life, and my fans are not what you're describing. They're kind, generous people who would give you the shirt off their back if you needed it. "Oh, please," Joy said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Spare me the romanticized version of rural America. We all know the reality. These people vote against their own interests. They resist change, and they hold on to prejudices that should have died out generations ago." Anna nodded in agreement. "She's right, Reba. The statistics don't lie. When you look at voting patterns, when you look at attitudes towards social issues, there's a clear pattern in the regions where country music is most popular." Whoopi made another attempt. "Ladies, maybe we should." Reba held up her hand. "Let me speak, please. You've both said your piece. Now I'd like to say mine." She turned to face Joy directly. "You sit here in your studio in New York City, making six figures to share your opinions, and you have the audacity to look down on people you've never met. People who work harder in a day than you probably work in a week. People who don't have the luxury of sitting around debating social issues because they're too busy trying to keep their farms running, their businesses open, their families fed." Joy's face flushed red. "Excuse me? Who do you think you're talking to?" "I'm talking to someone who invited me here as a guest and then proceeded to insult not just me, but millions of people who have supported my career for over 40 years. Reba replied, her voice rising slightly but still controlled. "You don't know my fans. You've never been to their towns, never sat at their dinner tables, never heard their stories. But you feel perfectly comfortable judging them from your ivory tower." Sunny finally spoke up, her voice cautious. "Reba, I think what Joy is trying to say is that there are legitimate concerns about certain attitudes that exist in some communities." "No, that's not what Joy is saying," Reba interrupted, shaking her head. "Joy is making sweeping generalizations and stereotyping an entire segment of America. That's exactly what you all claim to be against, isn't it? Stereotyping and prejudice?" Joy slammed her hand on the table. "Don't you dare compare what I'm doing to actual prejudice. I'm calling out real problems. I'm pointing out real issues." "By insulting an entire group of people you've never met?" Reba challenged. "By assuming you know everything about them based on where they live and what music they listen to? How is that not prejudice?" The audience was completely silent now. Several cameras zoomed in to capture every expression, every moment of the rapidly escalating confrontation. The producers in the control room were frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial. Anna jumped back in, her voice sharp. "Reba, you're deflecting. The fact is, country music has a long history of excluding certain voices, of promoting a very specific worldview that doesn't align with equality and progress. And you think pop music doesn't? You think television doesn't?" Reba fired back. "Every genre, every industry has had its problems. But that doesn't mean everyone in it is guilty by association. That's what you're doing right now. You're assuming that because I sing country music and because my fans might have different political views than you, we're all somehow backward or bigoted." Joy leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "Well, if the shoe fits. Your fans elected people who tried to strip away rights from vulnerable communities. Your fans support policies that hurt women, hurt minorities, hurt the environment. So yes, I'm comfortable saying there's a problem there. My fans are not a monolith." Reba's voice rang out clearly. "They don't all think the same way. They don't all vote the same way. But even the ones who might disagree with you politically, they're still human beings who deserve respect. They're still people with families and dreams and struggles. They're not cartoon villains for you to mock on national television." Whoopi finally managed to get a word in. "Okay, let's all just take a breath here. This conversation has gotten very heated." "No, Whoopi," Joy interrupted again. "I'm not backing down on this. Someone needs to hold people accountable. Someone needs to speak truth to power. And if that makes me uncomfortable to watch, so be it." Reba laughed, but it was a laugh of disbelief rather than amusement. "Speak truth to power? I'm a country singer from Oklahoma. You're a television host with a massive platform. Who exactly has the power in this scenario, Joy?" Sarah tried to mediate. "I think we can all agree that there are good people everywhere, in every community, regardless of their background or political beliefs." "Can we?" Joy challenged, looking at Sarah. "Can we really agree on that? Because I'm not so sure anymore. When people consistently vote against equality, when they consistently support policies that harm others, at what point do we stop giving them the benefit of the doubt?" Reba stood up from her chair. The sudden movement caused everyone at the table to freeze. The cameras followed her as she removed her microphone. "I came here today to talk about music. to share my joy about creating art and connecting with people through song. Instead, I've been subjected to an attack on my character and the character of people I love and respect. Reba, please sit down, Whoopi said, her voice taking on an urgent tone. We can work through this. But Reba shook her head. No, Whoopi, I appreciate you trying to moderate, but this has crossed a line. Joy, you've made it very clear how you feel about people like me and the people who support my music. You think we're all ignorant. You think we're all bigots. You think we're all standing in the way of progress. Joy started to speak, but Reba held up her hand again. I'm not finished. Let me be clear about something. I believe in treating everyone with dignity and respect, regardless of who they are or where they come from or what they believe. That includes you, Joy, even though you've shown me none of that courtesy today. But I don't have to sit here and listen to you insult millions of good-hearted people just because they don't share your worldview. Anna stood up as well, pointing at Reba. You're being incredibly defensive right now. Maybe that should tell you something. Maybe you should examine why you're so offended by valid criticism. Valid criticism? Reba turned to face Anna. Is it valid criticism to say that everyone who listens to country music is narrow-minded? Is it valid criticism to stereotype an entire region of the country as backward? You wouldn't accept that kind of generalization about any other group of people, but somehow it's okay when it's directed at rural Americans? Sunny stood as well, her hands raised in a placating gesture. Reba, nobody said all country music fans are narrow-minded. We're talking about patterns, about trends, about documented attitudes. That's exactly what you're doing. Reba interrupted. You're hiding behind data and statistics to justify prejudice. You're using documented attitudes as an excuse to dismiss and demean real people with real lives. Joy stood up now too, her face red with anger. You know what your problem is? You can't handle being challenged. You're used to everyone in your bubble telling you how wonderful you are, how perfect your values are. Well, welcome to the real world, where actions have consequences and beliefs have impact. My problem? Reba's voice rose for the first time. My problem is that I agreed to come on this show in good faith, expecting a professional interview, and instead I walked into an ambush. You never had any intention of having a real conversation. You just wanted to grandstand and score political points. Whoopi stood up as, well, trying to restore some order. Everyone, please, we need to calm down. We're all saying things we might regret. I don't regret anything I've said, Joy declared loudly. Somebody needs to call out this performative victimhood. Somebody needs to point out that wrapping yourself in the flag and talking about family values doesn't automatically make you a good person or your beliefs valid. Reba placed her microphone on the table with a decisive click. The sound echoed through the now silent studio. And there it is. You've just proven my point perfectly, Joy. You can't even conceive of the possibility that people who are different from you might actually be good people with valid perspectives. In your mind, if someone doesn't agree with you politically, they must be either stupid or evil. There's no room for nuance, no room for complexity, no room for human dignity. Don't you dare lecture me about human dignity. Joy shot back. I've spent my entire career fighting for human dignity. I've fought for people who didn't have a voice. I've stood up for the marginalized and the oppressed. Except for the people you've decided aren't worth fighting for, Reba replied quietly. Except for the people you've decided are acceptable targets for your contempt. That's not fighting for human dignity. That's picking and choosing who deserves respect based on your own biases. The audience remained frozen, hardly breathing. Several people had their phones out, recording the unprecedented scene unfolding before them. The producers had given up trying to control the situation and were simply letting it play out. Anna pointed at Reba again. You're twisting everything we're saying. We're not attacking you personally. We're raising legitimate questions about the culture and politics associated with your genre of music. You called my fans narrow-minded, Reba reminded her. You said they oppose progress. You said they hold on to prejudices. Those aren't questions, Anna. Those are accusations. And they're directed at real people, my people. Sarah tried one more time. I think if we could all just sit back down and approach this more calmly. There's nothing more to say, Reba said, cutting her off gently but firmly. I appreciate you trying to mediate, Sarah. And Whoopi, I know you were trying too, but Joy and Anna have made their positions crystal clear. They don't respect me, they don't respect my music, and they certainly don't respect the people who support me. Why would I stay and subject myself to more of this? Joy threw her hands up in the air. Fine, walk away. Run back to your safe space where nobody questions you. That's exactly what I expected. Reba turned back to face Joy one last time. I'm not running to a safe space. I'm removing myself from a toxic situation. There's a difference. A safe space is where you go to hide from uncomfortable truths. This is me recognizing that there's no productive conversation to be had here. You're not interested in understanding or dialogue. You just want to be right and to punish anyone who dares to disagree with you. That's rich coming from someone whose entire career is built on appealing to people who refuse to change their minds about anything, Joy retorted. My career is built on connecting with people through honest emotion and authentic storytelling, Reba corrected, something you might try sometime instead of just lecturing everyone about how enlightened you are. Whoopi stepped forward, placing herself between Reba and Joy. Okay, that's enough. Reba, if you feel you need to leave, I understand. Joy, sit down. Now. For once, Joy didn't have a comeback. She sat down heavily in her chair, her arms crossed tightly across her chest, her face still flushed with anger. Reba looked at Whoopi and gave a small, sad smile. I'm sorry it ended this way. I really did come here wanting to have a good conversation. Whoopi nodded. I know you did, and I apologize that it went in this direction. It's not your fault, Reba assured her. She glanced around the table one more time, her gaze landing briefly on each co-host. When her eyes met Joy's, she paused. I hope someday you'll realize that the people you look down on are just as human as you are. They have the same capacity for love, for growth, for kindness. They're not your enemies. They're your fellow Americans just trying to live their lives with dignity. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. She simply stared at Reba, her expression unreadable. Anna muttered something under her breath that the microphones didn't quite pick up. Sunny looked down at her hands. Sarah watched the whole scene with wide eyes, clearly processing everything that had just transpired. Reba took a step back from the table. To everyone in the audience, thank you for your time today. I'm sorry this took such an unfortunate turn. If you came here hoping to hear me talk about music and my tour, I apologize that you didn't get that. But I hope you at least saw someone standing up for people who are often dismissed and disrespected by those who should know better. A few people in the audience started to clap. Then more joined in. Soon, nearly half the audience was applauding as Reba turned and walked toward the exit. The cameras followed her movement, capturing every step. As Reba reached the edge of the stage, Joy suddenly stood up again. You think you're so noble? You think you're taking the high road? But all you're doing is enabling people who hurt others with their votes and their beliefs. Reba paused but didn't turn around. She spoke without looking back. And all you're doing is creating more division. You're making it impossible for people to have honest conversations because they're afraid of being attacked and stereotyped exactly the way you attacked and stereotyped them today. If you really want to change hearts and minds, maybe try treating people like human beings first. With that, she walked off the stage. The door closed behind her with a soft click that somehow felt louder than any of the shouting that had preceded it. The studio fell into complete silence. Whoopi looked directly at the camera. We're going to take a commercial break. Her voice was tight, controlled, professional, despite the chaos that had just unfolded. As soon as the cameras cut away, the studio erupted. Audience members were talking over each other. Some were shaking their heads in disappointment. Others were nodding in agreement with what Reba had said. The co-hosts all started talking at once, their voices creating a cacophony of accusations and defenses. Joy remained standing, her chest heaving with emotion. I don't care what anyone thinks. Someone had to say it. Say what, exactly? Whoopi demanded, rounding on her. That our guest fans are all bigots? That was your contribution? That was the important thing that needed to be said? Yes, Joy insisted. Because it's true. We can't keep pretending that everyone's opinions are equally valid. We can't keep acting like there aren't real problems in those communities. Anna backed her up. She's right. We have a platform. We have a responsibility to speak truth. Speaking truth is different from being disrespectful, Sarah said quietly. We could have addressed those issues without making Reba feel attacked. She felt attacked because she knows there's truth in what we were saying, Joy countered. People don't get that defensive unless they know on some level that you're right. Sunny shook her head. Or they get defensive because they're being unfairly characterized. Joy, you basically said all country music fans are narrow-minded. That's not a nuanced criticism. That's just prejudice dressed up as social commentary. The argument continued backstage, in the control room, and in the dressing rooms. Everyone had an opinion about what had just happened. The producers were frantically trying to figure out how to handle the rest of the show. The legal team was already on the phone. Meanwhile, Reba sat in her dressing room, already changed out of her green dress and back into the jeans and boots she had arrived in. Her manager was pacing back and forth, phone pressed to his ear as he dealt with the immediate fallout. "Are you okay?" one of the production assistants asked tentatively, peeking her head into the room. Reba looked up and smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Thank you for asking." "For what it's worth," the assistant said, stepping fully into the room. "I think you handled that with a lot of grace, more grace than they deserved." "I appreciate that," Reba replied, "but I'm not interested in revenge or making them look bad. I just couldn't sit there and let them talk about good people that way. My fans, the people who have supported me all these years, they deserve someone to stand up for them." The assistant nodded. "Well, you definitely did. That. The whole studio is buzzing about it." Back on the set, the show returned from commercial break. Whoopi addressed the camera with a professional composure that belied the tension still crackling through the studio. "As you saw, our interview with Reba McEntire took an unexpected turn. We want to acknowledge that emotions ran high and things were said on all sides. We'll be right back after this." The cameras cut away again. The co-hosts sat in awkward silence. The empty chair where Reba had been sitting seemed to loom larger than any of them. Joy stared straight ahead, her jaw set. Anna scrolled through her phone. Sunny and Sarah exchanged glances but said nothing. Whoopi rubbed her temples. The tension in the studio was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Everyone knew they had just witnessed something that would be talked about for years to come. A moment where passionate beliefs had collided so forcefully that there was no easy resolution, no clean ending, just the raw aftermath of people standing firm in their convictions. In the parking lot, Reba climbed into the waiting car. Her manager slid in beside her, still making calls, still doing damage control. But Reba herself seemed remarkably calm. She looked out the window at the New York City streets passing by. "Do you regret walking off?" her manager asked during a break between calls. Reba thought for a moment before answering. "No, I don't. I regret that it happened at all. I regret that we couldn't have a civil conversation. But I don't regret standing up for what I believe in and for the people I care about. Some things are more important than a television appearance." Her manager nodded slowly. "Your fans are going to love you for this. You know that, right?" "I didn't do it for their approval," Reba said softly. "I did it because it was right, because someone needed to say that you can't just dismiss millions of people because you disagree with them. You can't stereotype an entire community because it makes your political arguments easier. That's not how we heal divisions. That's how we make them worse." The car pulled away from the studio, leaving behind the chaos and controversy. But the impact of those 28 seconds when everything changed would echo for much longer. It had started with a simple question about values and exploded into something much bigger. A clash of worldviews, a collision of perspectives, a moment when the divide in American culture was laid bare for everyone to see. In the end, nobody's mind had been changed. Joy still believed she was right to call out what she saw as problematic attitudes. Anna still thought they had a responsibility to challenge their guests. Sunny and Sarah were caught in the middle, understanding both sides, but unsure where they truly stood. Whoopi was left trying to hold together a show that had just fractured on live television, and Reba drove away, her head held high, knowing she had done what she felt was right even when it cost her. She had defended people who rarely had defenders in rooms like that. She had stood firm in her beliefs, even when surrounded by voices telling her she was wrong. She had walked away from a situation that had become toxic rather than compromising her principles for the sake of appearances. In that moment, she had shown that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to participate in something that goes against everything you believe in. The empty chair remained on the set for the rest of the show, a silent testament to what had transpired. Every time the camera panned across the table, viewers could see it, a reminder of the moment when a country music legend had enough, stood up, and walked out, leaving behind stunned silence and uncomfortable questions that nobody seemed quite ready to answer. The audience members who witnessed it would tell the story for years, describing the electricity in the air and the way time seemed to slow down.